Oh, thank you. I was muted. Had no idea. Man, I've been talking this whole time. Okay, so thank you, by the way, for pointing that out. I had not noticed. Welcome again. Welcome. The key terms today are not like normal key terms. Good afternoon, guys. They are just we're gonna do them all at the end. There's gonna be a whole slide that's basically the key terms at the end. So you don't need to write them down this early. I'm just having them up there to use up the box. But the objective we're going to talk about and the do now, don't worry about the do now question. We're going to kind of move on from there quickly because I want more time to review than to go over the do now. Basically, today is review, but it's also part new. The stuff that we are going to talk about, you should have already heard. Be ready to type in the chat box and respond or come off mute and speak and all that stuff. And just know that what do I think about the election? I'll talk a little bit about the election at the top, or at the end. Sorry, I should say, not at the top. So be prepared for the review. It's a review, but it's also stuff that we've covered in a different context. We're going to look at it in a different way to make sure that you see all the connections that piece everything together. So that is what we're going to do. It is 2:25. So we are going to start momentarily. Okay, so I'll give you about a minute and a half to get the objective and to get ready to go. If you have any questions, please type them in chat. Otherwise, we're going to start very soon. Again, be ready to type responses in chat. That's what most of today is going to be. So be ready to respond. About 40 seconds left. Again, thank you for being on time. Thank you for being ready. We're going to go ahead and start in about 25 seconds. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. So we're talking about regional identities. We're specifically talking about the North, the West, and the South, right? These are all the regional identities from 1800 leading up to 1848. So the reason we're doing this is because we're going to get ready to take our unit exam on Friday, and your unit exam is all free response. There is no multiple choice. There is no SAQ. It is just one long LEQ, one long essay question. So, and in preparation for that, I want to make sure that we understand most, if not all, of the information we covered during this unit in the context of regional identity and regional beliefs. So we're going to get into all of that right now. So first key point is really brief and it's really simple. Northern United States formed their own identity based on industry, urbanization, and abolition. Those are the three main parts of the Northern identity, both politically and socially. All right. They also have a lot to do with social reform. I might add that in there, social reform. So I'll give you about 90 seconds to get down that first key point. Again, I would include social reform. There isn't necessarily a slide on it, but it's something I'd want to add. About a minute left. If you need more time than that, let me know. About 20 seconds and we're moving on. Again, I might want to include social reform on key point 1. Now, for the next couple of slides, as you're getting ready, again, don't write it all word per word. We're going to kind of talk through what to write, and what you're going to want to write down are the answers to some of the questions that I put into the slide. Those are a part of this. So that being said, let's move forward. Industry in the North, you've seen it. You know what it looks like. We've talked about it. Now, as the market revolution develops, industry rises. So what do you need there? You need the market revolution happens, right? It's developing. Industry on the rise. Industry increases. Who can tell me what the market revolution was? You can either come up here and say it, or you can type it in the chat. I'll give you a little bit of time. What was the market revolution? Like, in a nutshell, put it in a bow. What is it? What was the market revolution? Do we not remember? I know we know this. We talked about it. It did something. What did it do? You can type it or you can say it. Growth of industry, innovation. Innovation's good. You're talking about the innovations, which are really good. Think about the term, right? Market revolution. What's happening? You guys are both right. That's a part of the market revolution. Those things are why it happened. But what was it? What did it do? Why is it called the market revolution? What's changing? Innovations are there and they help start it. But what's changing? Producer to consumer? Yes. In what sense? Expanding markets? Good, right? The markets are growing. The markets are expanding. That's right, Zach. So basically what you get is markets go from local to national. That's the change. That's the revolution. Yes, innovations are there and they're coming up soon, right? Innovations are part of it. That's part of why it's able to happen. The reason it happens is because there's innovations. But what the revolution is the expanding of the markets, the growing from local to national. So instead of just buying or selling on a small scale, you're buying and selling on a big scale. So the market revolution was a change from local markets to national markets. And again, if you don't know, if you can't internalize or picture that, it's the change from buying and selling locally, like in the town, right? Think farmers market versus Walmart. Think small scale versus big scale. That's the market revolution. And this identifies the North. This is part of the North. This expansion was caused by what you guys already said, right? Innovations in technology, all happening at once, whether it's railroads, whether it's the cotton gin, whether it's steam engines, right? All of them are happening at the same time simultaneously, and that's what's causing the markets to grow, right? It's giving the ability for it to happen all at once. Again, all of these things are identified with the North. It's why industry grows in the North, in part. So I'll give you about 2 minutes for that to get that info down. Again, you need to know just that market revolution, markets are growing, expanding, changing. You need to know that industry is rising in the North with that revolution. And you need to know that part of the causes is innovations in technology. This is all review, but I want you to look at it from the context of this is something the North identifies with. It's something the North identifies themselves as. It impacts the decisions they'll make or the things they want to do. So like, can somebody remind me what a tariff is and what a tariff does? So like, what is a tariff and who does it help? Tax on imported goods. Awesome. Yeah, tariff's a tax on an imported good, right? That's awesome. So we know a tariff. Do you remember who they help? Yes or no? Yes, Zach, you can, especially if you already have this in your notes. Again, a lot of this is review, right? So if you already have this, yeah, you can just put that it leads, but we're talking about it in the light of how it identifies with the North. So yeah, you can just put the first point if you already have it. Helps manufacturers. Yes, it does, right? So a tax on an imported good is a tariff. Tariffs help manufacturers. So if I gave you a list of North, South, and West, which region's most likely to vote for tariffs or to approve of tariffs or like tariffs? The North, right? Because the North identifies with this industry, and therefore they support things that support industry, right? That's how politics play into all of this stuff. And I know there's an election going on, and you're going to hear me talk about politics a lot. We're talking about politics in 1848. And we can talk a little bit about the election after, if you want to, if you have questions about that. But so the North supports things that support industry, right? So keep that in mind. The North supports things that support industry. Anything industrial, positive in the North. Make sense? So like I said, you don't need all of this written, but that's what you need to think of. Am I good to move on? Yes or no? If I see blanks, I'm going to assume that I'm not. I see some yeses. Yes, good. Give it a little bit more time just to make sure. Just again, if you're good to go, if I could get a yes in the chat so I know that we're good to move on because I talked through most of that. Move on. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Moving on. Okay. So industry in the North. Politically speaking, Northerners favored industry. They favored stronger government. And therefore, they supported groups like the Whigs and the later on Republicans. Republicans are right at the tail end of this, so be careful with using them. But if you're going to, when you write in Republican, write in like 1848, like at the end. Republicans or something comes in at the end. Protective tariffs, national infrastructure, all good things to Northerners. Northerners like when the government spends money on infrastructure. That's what you need for that. That second bullet point, just basically Northerners like infrastructure. They like spending money on infrastructure. They favor stronger government. Whigs, Republicans. That's what you need to know about the industry and how it affects the North. We talked about it already. You guys already nailed it earlier. What you need, again, not word per word, just a different angle, a different aspect of this. Give me about another minute and change on here. Then we'll move on. About 30 seconds. All right, so we're going to move forward. So urbanization. With industrialization comes urbanization. Really quick, chat box, what is urbanization? Or off mute and shout it. What is urbanization? You can do either.
When people went to the cities to look for jobs.
Right, people moving to the cities. Cities growing, people moving to the cities, that's urbanization. Growth and expansion of cities, right? And it can happen from both ways. People moving there or just overall like, hey, city's getting bigger. Movement from Rome. Both of those work. Awesome. So urban areas tend to request more infrastructure. Things like federally funded projects and tasks. Why? If you live in a city, why do you want the government to have special projects to build things like roads or new buildings or new system. Why? There's two reasons why. Why? Why do you think that is? Think about it. Why would people that live in cities want the government to spend money to improve the city? So you can move around faster to get to your job. Sure, that's a good one. And again, that's a really specific one, but that's a good one. Who does this help? Infrastructure, help manufacturers transport goods. Awesome. That's another good one. Why else? Who benefits from better infrastructure in the city? Like, if tomorrow you woke up, the people do, right? The people that live in the city. If tomorrow you woke up and all the roads were gone and it was just dirt roads and sand and hills and nonsense like way back when, it'd be harder to get around, right? But since there's flat paved roads everywhere, it's easier to drive around. Infrastructure helps the city. It helps the people. Now, on top of that, do roads build themselves? Yes or no? I know this is a silly question, but I need somebody to know, right? So if you're going to build a new road, what do you need to do in order to get it built? Yes, they do. What do you need to do in order to get a road built? What do you need to do? You need workers, right? So that creates more jobs. Looking at the big makes you feel cluster. The city all big and weird. But so roads don't build themselves. So the road benefits the people after it's built. It also benefits the people in the city because it gives them a job to do. So urban areas like cities tend to like government projects, tend to like more infrastructure. And the North is all urban, right? So keep that in mind. Okay. Urban areas tend to favor abolition due to their lack of dependence on slavery. This is just a quick bullet point added in there. Cities like abolition because cities don't need slaves. Give you about a minute and a half to finish up anything on that slide, and then we will move on. This is a weird city picture, by the way. I will say that, but it's what came up when I typed urbanization, you know? About a minute left. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. So we're going to talk about abolition. What was the abolitionist movement again? Somebody want to remind me what it was? What's the removal of slavery? Perfect. Call for the end of slavery, right? That's abolition. Why does the abolitionist movement grow in the North? Why does the abolitionist movement grow in the North? Again, you can type it or you can come up here and say it, but why? Second Great Awakening is good. That's a societal cause, sure. And then there you go. That's what you need, right? Less people want slaves. They do not rely on slaves. So the Second Great Awakening is part of it, right? That's the reason people have the thought. But the reason that the movement grows and gets steam is because they don't depend on slavery. So it's both of those things, right? They want to get into heaven. That's true. The reason they want to get into heaven, they want to be good because of the Second Great Awakening. But they also don't need slaves in the North. So a Northerner walking down the street, right? Jill and John Northerner, They hear about the horrors of slavery. They have the second great awakening happening where they don't want to have eternal damnation. They want to be able to go to heaven afterwards. And they look around and they're saying, why do we even do this slavery thing? This thing's horrible, right? The more they hear about it, the less they like it, the more horrible it is. Therefore, the more likely they are to oppose it. The reason that abolition grows in those areas is because there is no dependence on it. It's not a part of their way of life. It's something Northerners don't even really deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's why in the South you'll see less and less abolition, not because the Second Great Awakening isn't as powerful over there, because it is, but they're so dependent on it in the South that they try to ignore that part of it. They try to like brush it aside, like, no, we don't, slaves are still good. That's why there's all those arguments like mudsling theories and stuff about slaves, but it doesn't really work out. So the abolitionist movement grows because there's no need for slaves in the North. And again, that underlying Second Great Awakening cause is always there. Again, and just to point this out, abolition is a strong stance. It is not common sense the way it is now, right? It is not something that, like, well, duh, of course you're an abolitionist. Not back then, it wasn't. It's a divisive topic, more so than most topics have been in American history overall. And it is not a popular stance to take. Even in the North, it's not that popular, especially early on. The earlier you go, the less popular it is. So just keep that in mind. This is a strong stance. It's hard to remember or to think of it as such a polarizing topic, but it was. So I'll give you about a minute and a half to get that info down. If you need more time, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to move on at the end of that time and advance to the next section. Did I really pronounce it Wiesen? I don't remember doing that, but there's a good chance I did it. About 40 seconds left. All right, let's go to move on. Key point 2. The Western states developed their own identity based on frontier lifestyles and expansion. Do not stop at expansion. Don't include the next part. Stop at expansion. So make sure you stop at expansion based on frontier lifestyles and expansion. So it'd be about 90 seconds. Again, the Western states developed their own identity based on frontier lifestyles and expansion. Frontier, expansion. Do not include the third part. There, I actually figured out how to take it out. About 40 seconds. Again, frontier lifestyle and expansion. right, let's get ready to move on. So, balance between free and slave states. So, before you write anything down, the year is 1819. There is 11 free states and 11 slave states. Everything is perfectly balanced. Everything is working out fine. But throughout the rest of the years, right, through 1848 and even beyond, adding new states into the Union is going to be a major, major issue. It's going to be a major topic of contention and debate because every new state that comes in has the potential to break the balance. The first state that does that is Missouri, right, with the Missouri Compromise. But for the most part, it's true though. And for the most part, this is avoided because states are added in pairs. So when Missouri comes in, part of the Missouri Compromise is so does Maine. Slave state, free state, right? And it keeps happening like that. And it'll happen that way up until 1850. And we don't have to talk about that because that's not in our, that's after 1848. So for the sake of this review, you don't need to talk about it. Just know that the Western state identity, like the identity of the Western region, is dragged into the slavery debate every time a new state gets added. And what you get is the Western states have an identity, but it's really young because they're new. It's like a baby, right? The Western territories, this weird thing, it's based on the frontier. They like it when the US builds things like railroads because it makes them expand faster. They have this unique lifestyle, but they're being pulled in both directions. The North pulls them one way towards abolition, towards social reform, towards industry, things like mining, for example. And the South keeps pulling them another way by expanding into that territory, using the good soil that is in those Western states, those Western states, to plant things like cotton, spreading slavery with it. Slavery will spread west and expand further due to Southern planters buying that land and expanding out west. And it's this pull. So the Western identity is always going to have that. You could argue both sides of it. They're pulled a little bit one way, and eventually when the Civil War happens, they're going to split, right? You're going to have the northern half and the southern half. But there are Western states, they do have an identity, but it's being stretched and pulled in both directions. So just keep that in mind. Missouri kind of way. Well, so the reason that there's a whole compromise, I'll talk about the Missouri Compromise, we'll save the other one for later, is Missouri comes in and they want to be a state and they're trying to apply. And the decision is, all right, well, we'll let them decide. And, Missouri decides to be a slave state. And so then in order to keep the balance, the northern states, and they add another state, Maine, they cut it off from Massachusetts, and they make that its own free state to keep the balance. And they also prevent slavery from expanding. We're going to get into these a little more when we talk about sectionalism and how there's a line and how slavery was supposed to end, but it doesn't. I know we mentioned it once way back when it happened. Oversimplified, if you guys have seen the Civil War Oversimplified, actually does it really well. The reason I didn't show you that clip is because they talk about the 1850 compromise. And for the sake of this review, you cannot talk about that compromise. If you mention California, no, because we stop at 48. Does that make sense? But if you have seen it or if you want to look it up, it's in the first 5 minutes of the Civil War Oversimplified. And he does it really funny. It's really good. But again, just be careful with that because we stop at 1848 for the Unit 4 exam. So you don't want to talk further along. You don't want to get into something that hadn't happened yet. So I'll give you about a minute and change on here. If you need more time than that or think you do, let me know. But again, you got to get that Western states are dragged into the slavery debate at every step of the way. About 40 seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. If you need me to go back, just let me know. You know, because oh no. Does it really only have 8 pages left? I feel like, is it a one subject? It's probably one. So this one's short. All you need to do is sum up this second point, right? Americans love expanding west. It's like their favorite thing to do. So whenever opportunities come to claim land, they take them. That's it. That's all you got to know. Expansion is a part of the Western identity. If you live in the West, what do you want to do? Expand west. It's like your favorite thing to do. So I'll give you a minute. This is really brief, right? Just Western states love to expand west. They want to keep growing into new territory. About 45 seconds. Again, just Western states love to expand west. They want to keep growing and expanding into new territory. We're almost done. We're just going to talk about the South next. All right, let's move forward. Okay, key point 3 is up and give you about a minute and a half. The southern states developed their own identity, of course, based in cash crop agriculture, plantation systems, and slavery. Last key point of the day. Oh, don't say that. You know what a notebook is. You use it every day when you're in class. You keep really good, clean notes, right? Like if you were here in person. They don't actually have to be clean. Oh man, I'm glad so many of you are totally not being sarcastic right now. You totally keep good notes. That makes me feel really happy. We're about to move on, about 15 seconds. Totally have notes. Good, good. All right, let's move forward. So the plantation system. Totally have your notebook. So U.S. plantation system, I went too far ahead, is dependent on wide open land, fertile soil, and abundance of like a labor force. So you need a labor force, you need really good soil, and you need a lot of empty land. So why does the plantation system work so well in the South? If it seems like the answer is obvious, it's because it is. Slavery. They have good soil, and they have slavery. So basically, it works so well because the geography matches perfectly. Good weather, great soil, wide empty spaces, and the South has been relying on slavery since 1619, right? More and more so since then. So slavery's been around in the South. It's been around everywhere, but the South has been really utilizing it because they've always had great soil and great geography for cash crops. What is king in the South? Cotton, right? Cotton is king in the South. So even later on, when cotton develops, the region will still be dependent on this plantation system. It will make them work. It will make them money. And slavery is a huge part of why we're just... I said king in the South, so I'm going to move on now. But basically, again, the place is perfect for cash crops, for plantations. So basically what you need, the plantation system works because the South is a perfect place geographically, and they rely on slavery. Yeah. Not a king. Can't be a king. That would be not American for me to identify as a king. It'd be like I was elected or something by the, I don't know, by the lead team of Monterey Park 3 years ago or something. I don't know. Yeah, to be shady. I'd like to think I'm not too shady. Only when I figure out ways to torture history students with assignments and stuff. That's a little shady. Definitely not Slim. About a minute and change left on here. Oh no, I'm kind of full. About a minute left. About 30 seconds. Or 40, I'm sorry, 40 seconds.
Cavazos, are we testing tomorrow or Friday?
Friday.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to double check.
Yep. Ten seconds. We're gonna move on. All right, so again, the dependence of the plantation system led to the spread of slavery. So the success of the plantation system led to more and more slavery, especially in the Western states. So you don't need that first bullet, you need the second one, right? The plantation system is responsible for spreading slavery. The cotton gin and the profitability of cotton, was responsible for the plantation system. It's like a weird, evil little circle. Does it make sense? The plantation system is responsible for spreading and continuing slavery, especially in the West. And the cotton gin / the profitability of cotton is responsible for continuing the plantation system. It's what kept it alive. And that's what kept it like as a major revenue source. So I'll give you about a minute and a half for that second bullet point. A minute left. Almost done, guys. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on. So the abolition movement did not really happen in the South because at the end of the day, the Southerners needed their slaves. They depended on it. It was something that was around them every day. They were used to the evils of it. it didn't really deter them. Even the Second Great Awakening wasn't quite strong enough to do that. Politicians in the South tended to be Democrats. They tended to appreciate smaller government, lack of control, and the conservation of slavery. Things like no tariffs. So I would focus more on that second bullet point because this is kind of a given based on the earlier ones. But if you want to write them all, write them all. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. And then afterwards, all you need is the space for 3 sections. And I'm going to close out the lesson, show you the exit ticket, and then tell you what you can do to prepare for the exam. Forty-five seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start moving on. So this is the last slide, the last content. These are the bullet points for each section, what they want, what they need, right? Now, I would recommend getting these and leaving space. So I'm going to give you about 2.5 minutes to get the bullet points down. And then I want you to leave a little bit of space just so you have it for while you're reviewing and things you can add in. These are like the political climates, the beliefs, how the regions identify themselves. So north, south, west, and then what they believe. So I'll give you about 2.5 minutes to get through that, to get that down. And then I'm going to talk about what you can do to review on your own using either your notes or using other means. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the exam, and then we'll be done. I'll show you the exit ticket, and that'll be it. About a minute left. Okay, so if you go to Google Classroom, the exit ticket's already up. Before you get there, a couple of things. Now, the exam on Friday is all free response. It's the whole exam. It's an LEQ, that's it. You get one chance, it's one question, you gotta do well, you gotta try your best. Now, I cannot tell you what it is. Can't tell you what the prompt is. I can't show you the prompt. I'm not going to do that even if I could. So that way you can prepare. All I will tell you is that any and all review that you do, because I know you guys are going to totally review all week leading up to Friday, you should do it looking at the topics, the material, and the information from the perspective and point of view of regional identity, whether it be North, West, or South, right? Any topic, whether it's the cotton gin, whether it's the market revolution, anything, you can connect them as far as identities go and how each one affects one another. And you should be doing that. So one thing you could do, one thing I would recommend doing, if you guys enjoy, like whether it's Heimler history or Crash Course or something like that, if you're going to check those out in review and way to practice, can you go back to the notes? I will go back in a second. If you're going to do that in a way to review, make sure that you keep these in mind. Something you could do even is make North, West, and South, and then just take notes on that. Which thing is North and which thing is Southern, which thing is Western. Do that, keep that in mind. Can you sum that somewhat? I don't know what you mean by some. You let me know, maybe I can. Now, what I will say leading into the end as I'm about to go back to the notes so that we finish up, keep in mind that you need to be using detail when you respond. So like sum that up, what we're supposed to do. So that's what I'm going to do now. So your exit ticket is really easy. Identify and describe the political identity of the North, the West, and the South. So tell me about them, tell me what they believe in politically, and then give me some details. It doesn't need to be a whole paragraph, but it should be at least 2, maybe even 3 sentences for each section. Treat it like part A of 3 separate LEQs, SAQs, I'm sorry. Think of it like part A of an SAQ, right? Identify and describe the North. And then it would be like, give me evidence, give me evidence. Instead of the evidence part, you're just identifying and then describing the identity in the North. So that's all you're doing for this exit ticket. It's already posted, so you can already get started. I'll be on the call for the last 8 to 10 minutes if you have questions, but that's it. It's on your own. It's due at the normal due time. There is the last slide if you needed it for notes. And if you don't have any other questions, guys, you're good to go. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good one.